Threshold is kind of hard to explain. It's a game about working a terrible job in a dystopian universe, or maybe it's trying to say something about inequality. You could also argue it's about factory farming, or corporate culture, or burnout, or labor exploitation, or overconsumption, or the games industry, or something else entirely. I'm sure you could come up with very strong arguments for all those narratives, and quite a lot more. But I'm not here to say this game neatly fits into just one box, when really it's open for interpretation. Instead, I think it makes the most sense to just tell you about my time with it and let you decide for yourself. If you haven't heard of it before, Threshold is a recent release by Julien Eveillé. Pardon my terrible French. It's published by Critical Reflex, who also published some other recent indie hits like Buckshot Roulette and Mouthwashing. Now I'm not sure how much say the publisher had in making this game, so I'm just gonna assume this is mostly a solo developer project with little outside input. But another interesting note is that this developer previously worked at Arcane, having a hand in Dishonored 2 and many other games you all know and love. Nowadays I think he's working on Hunt Showdown, which all goes to say this is definitely the work of a skilled dev, and it really shows. At first glance, you might think this fits in with all the other amateur, retro, PS1-ish games, but there is a lot of polish here you wouldn't expect to see in those games. I personally enjoyed how the game was designed in a very open-ended way, giving the player the ability to poke around and try experimenting with different things, all of which the dev seems to have accounted for. Like, there's some sludge that you can collect down by the river that you can pour into a machine to get tickets to buy more air canisters to breathe. Okay, that makes sense in terms of supplementing the main gameplay loop, but what about all the other ways you can interact with that system? Can you dump fish from the river in and also get tickets? Sure, why not? What about sewage straight from the outhouse? Yep, that also gives you tickets. And what if I want to scoop up gravel off the ground and dump that in instead? Well, you can, but it damages the machine. Keep at it and you'll break the thing, fundamentally changing how you progress through the rest of the game. And there's other stuff you can dump in that machine too, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Tickets, air canisters, what's all that about? Well, in essence, the tickets are currency and the air canisters are health. You see, your main objective is to keep a train running at an expected pace by blowing a whistle into a tube whenever the train slows down too much. However, the air on the surface is so poor that blowing that whistle uses up almost all of your available oxygen. So to keep yourself alive, you have to periodically bite down on these little glass canisters of air that refill your lungs. You get some gnarly cuts, depicted by the mouth on the side of the screen, but it keeps you going for just a little bit longer. Meanwhile, a ticket printer is constantly pumping out tickets every so often that you can use in a machine to get more air canisters. And like I said before, you can supplement your ticket supply by filling up a bucket and dumping it into another machine. So you'll be running back and forth between all these machines to keep both the train and your lungs running optimally. But that's just what you have to do to keep from failing. In between those tasks, you're going to want to explore the world and try to figure out what's really going on. There is one other employee, a guy named Mo, who shows you the ropes and can answer some questions you have about the place. But unfortunately, he dips out every few minutes, leaving you in charge of keeping the whole place running solo. On the other hand, he's super loyal to the company, so you can't snoop to the fullest degree when he's around. Like, you want to build a bridge up to the observatory to see into the trains? He'll snitch on you and destroy the bridge. Or you want to dig up the grave of a former employee who died in a fall trying to escape the place? He'll yell at you about that too. Okay, well maybe that last one does deserve a little scolding, but you do find the key to the outhouse in the grave, so it's not for nothing. In between running the trains, talking to Mo, and exploring every nook and cranny, you can sometimes pop into a little shack and ask questions to your mysterious employers. They never really give you a solid answer on anything, which fits in perfectly with the formless void they inhabit. Any little tidbit you learn about this world just leads to countless more questions, most of which are never truly resolved. And that's where you're going to see a lot of controversy about this game. So much of it is open to interpretation that you never know how people are going to take it. Like, just head on over to the Steam page and you'll see tons of reviews from different people, both positive and negative, with wildly different ideas of what this game is actually about. Like this negative review that only says, vegan propaganda. Okay, there's a train full of dead animals, so I guess that's one interpretation. But wouldn't you know it, the dev actually responded to this one saying that he isn't even a vegan himself. So I guess we can cross that off the list. The whole based on a true story message definitely made me think twice about what this game is really trying to say. Obviously there isn't some dystopian world with poison air where people have to blow whistles to keep a meat train running at optimal speeds. But it does feel a lot like a take on the games industry, you know, grinding down the newcomers with impossible schedules until they eventually burn out. And given that the dev himself has worked on AAA titles, you could make a lot of connections there. Like, is Mo the initials for somebody he worked with? Or is this some sort of broader critique on society as a whole? Everyone's hands are dirty in some way, and it's just the nature of living and working in the modern world? You could either choose to work and maintain the status quo, or rebel and suffer the consequences. Or maybe it's based on some real-life incident in France that I have absolutely no knowledge of. Think of it what you will, but if you do play this game, you'll at least have plenty to think about. Now, I could just call it here and say, play this game or don't, I don't care, my job here is done. But I did want to talk about the most interesting part of the game, the ending. So if you don't want any spoilers, you can close the video here. Thanks for watching, see you next time. But for everyone else, let me explain how this all goes down. If you scour the map, you'll eventually collect all the planks needed to rebuild the bridge to the observatory. This lets you look down into the train and see that it's full of dead animals, for whatever reason that may be. But you also find a message that says, "My mouth." It seems a little cryptic at first, but you eventually make the connection that it was written by the guy in the grave. Mo gets mad at you for finding out what's in the train and rats you out to your employers. They call you into the office and you can choose to either resign here or continue on to see where the story goes. If you choose to continue, you can head back to the grave, dig up the guy's mouth, and find a black whistle inside. You then take the next logical step and try out that whistle on the train, making it go faster and faster until it eventually breaks. There is the obvious connection here to real-life whistleblowers who choose to go against their company for some greater good. But whatever you thought might happen next gets completely thrown out the window. Off in the distance, a structure behind the wall explodes, erupting in a volcano of blood which quickly starts spilling over the walls and raining down on everything. The river runs red and the background fades into the horizon. But soon it isn't just blood rain, but piles of flesh and dead animals falling all around you. In the meantime, you're still struggling for air, especially after how many times you just blew the whistle to set this all in motion. So you return to the machine shed as parts of the environment literally crumble around you. You start stuffing corpses into your bucket and feeding them to the machine to earn a few more tickets to keep yourself going. You try blowing the whistle at the elevator and the company shed to no avail. Meanwhile, corpses keep piling up the longer you take, with no end in sight. Getting desperate, you start climbing the massive piles of bodies looking for another way out. One of these piles is stacked just high enough to bring you up and over a cliff above the machine shed. And as you step over the crest towards the unknown, you turn back and take one last look at the sea of carnage below, before the screen cuts to black. In a short epilogue, you find that the company has lost track of the yellow clerk, that being you, of course. Meanwhile, Mo is stuck underground, probably doomed to wait out his final days under an ocean of blood. They said some sort of intense friction activity caused the catastrophe, but not much else of value. The game then ends with a results screen showing how long you played, with counters for killed and fallen. They never explain what this means, but the most straightforward interpretation would be that those are the number of animals that died over the course of the game. I don't think there were physically 21,000 corpses in the level when I finished the game, but maybe it's some sort of extrapolated number. Or maybe those numbers mean something else entirely. Maybe I would have figured out more about the game if I had asked better questions to the higher-ups. I do know that there are many more endings, and I'm sure I'd be able to come up with a lot more theories if I'd witnessed all of those. But I'm kind of fine calling it here. I enjoyed my short time with it, and I'm okay with not knowing every little detail about the game. I'm sure there's way more you could experience for yourself if you played the game a little differently. Or maybe you already have? Whether you've played it or not, I'd love to hear about your theories in the comments below. If you like weird, tightly designed indie games with a deeper message, maybe this one is worth checking out. I'd say fans of the Pathologic series might be interested on vibes alone, but they are drastically different games. Either way, thanks for sticking around to the end. I hope to see you all in the next one.